Hey guys, welcome back to the Homework Assignment. I'm your host, RJ Patino, and today, again, we're going to discuss how to find the balance between work life and home life. We have a guest here today, Blake Clark with Limitless Realty. He's agreed to join us and kind of break down really what his business is and how he runs it and some of the things he's learned along the way about running a magnificent team, building his team, scaling his business, and really getting down kind of to the nitty-gritty on how he personally is able to balance his home and work life. So Blake, welcome.
Thanks. Appreciate you guys having me, man.
Thanks
Excited.
for being here. So tell us a little bit about Limitless Realty. What do you guys got going on?
So we've been open just a little over 2 years. So when we opened it, I've been in real estate since 2015. Started off as a solo agent, started a team at the end of 2017, going into 2018. Did that all the way through 2020, mid 21, and that's when we launched Limitless Real Estate. And so just passed our 2-year mark in May.
Fantastic.
How many? We've got 68 agents as of today that work for us.
That's freaking fantastic. And we were just having a conversation, like 2 months ago, how many did you have?
We were at 38, I think, right around there. Yeah.
So almost double.
Yeah.
That's phenomenal.
Yep.
So obviously you've worked in real estate for a while and you've been a part of some different companies, right?
Yes, I have.
So what made you kind of want to break off and start your own thing?
So it's interesting because I told everybody when I got into real estate, I had zero intentions of doing real estate, which is funny because I tell people that, but it's, I started off because I was working corporate America, had the 401k, had all that stuff, lost my job. And then I basically found myself kind of doing some freelancing stuff in between. I was doing some marketing for a chiropractic office. I was running a phone dialer system for a big call center for a while there. Did that. Then I'd started a couple e-commerce businesses at the time. So I was kind of doing a little bit of everything, but I didn't have that like retirement and still being young at that time. I was in my mid 20s, 25, 26. And I was like, I got to do something, it's still early enough in time. So I wanted to basically get into flip properties and rental properties is what it was. So I got my real estate license solely to just buy properties. And even then I didn't really know what the hell I was doing. I did it just because everybody I was watching that was like wealthy, they all seemed to own real estate. And I was like, I didn't even know what it really meant. They were just like, yeah, if you want to be wealthy, own real estate. And so I hate to tell people that because I really went into this thing blind. But when I went into it, it was really good because I am really good with like numbers and sales. And the problem with real estate is everybody's really emotionally attached to it, right? Like people buy houses, it's where they raise their families, they raise their kids there. So it's always an extremely emotional process where for me, it's not, it's just an asset. I've always looked at it that way. I'm like, it's just a house. Like you can buy it, sell it, flip it, turn it into more money, buy something bigger, buy something smaller. So I always literally looked at things as like just a game of Monopoly. That's it. Like, how can I buy a property? How can I improve it? So Michaela and I, my wife, when we had bought properties, I had bought one that was a foreclosure, my very first house at 22 years old. Picked it up. It was ugly as all heck, and I lived in it and fixed it up and sold it. When I met her, I'd rented it out for a little while before we sold it, lived in her house, fixed it up. We bought one that was a massive fixer-upper. So we'd gone and flipped about 2 to 3 properties that we had personally lived in before we got to the house we're at now, so we could save up enough money for a down payment for it to make sense. And then just doing so well from like a numbers perspective, it just naturally turned into a couple friends reached out to me, did a good job, threw in a little bit of marketing and consistency and all the things I learned from corporate America that I structured my personal business, because that's a problem. A lot of entrepreneurs that get into real estate, they don't have any structure. They just, I'm into it because I'm free. And in reality, that's actually what makes you fail. You have to be structured and disciplined and treat it like a job, especially I mean, they see these guys that have been doing this for 20 years. They're on the beach drinking the pina coladas and they think they can go from point A to point B. So I never saw things that way. And then for there, it just took off, just slowly compounded. And by year 3, I was ready for a team. So,
100%. So that kind of carries into you're talking about like your systems, the way you operate your company, obviously. I always kind of tied into like football. I saw a lot of players that went to NFL and stuff like that were great. And then they, would want to coach afterwards, and they can't necessarily do it. They had the talent, they had the skill, but they didn't know how to coach. They didn't know how to do that, right? So, running a business is way different than working in a business, in my opinion. So, kind of digging in a little deeper to that, we had a conversation a few weeks back where you talked to me kind of about your background a little bit, and you mentioned, all these other companies you work for didn't really have a culture, and so you were really wanting to build a culture. So what is your guys' culture at Limitless?
We have a culture, basically, it's very family-centric, so it's just, I made a rule for myself when I left corporate America and I decided to start my own business. I didn't want to walk through the doors and work with people I just didn't like or couldn't work with. And that's kind of the cool thing about when you build a business, you kind of have that choice. Now, you have to be realistic with it, and you can't just say, hey, everybody's just like me. We do this really stupid exercise. I tell tell people all the time, but when people come into my company, we ask them, what animal are you? Like, you get 4 choices. Are you a lion? Are you a monkey? Are you a puppy? Or are you an owl? And they always look at me like, what the hell are you talking about? But one of my business coaches that I had back in the day taught me that question, because he's like, the problem is if you hire a bunch of yous, what are you strong suit? Like, really, when you lay down on paper, we're all amazing at some things and we're horrible, right? Yeah, and we fall somewhere in the middle of that spectrum based on what type of a personality profile we have. So for me, I'm a high D, high driver, like always very good to go for results. But the problem is somebody like me, I'll stack body bags, right? Like, it's just one of those things, like, I care about the end result so much. So one would identify as like a lion, right? In that scenario. Problem is, I'm not detailed, I'm not organized, I'm not structured. I'm not really all that analytical in most cases. It's just wake up every day, here's the end result, we're going to get that end result. But if I have a bunch of guys with me, that's great. We're going to get a lot of sales. And I did back when I first started my first sales team at one of my corporate jobs, I hired a bunch of guys like me. Guess what? Sales were amazing. Customer service sucked. Follow-up sucked. Client retention sucked. Conversion rates sucked. All that sucked because, we were great at this end, but we didn't have the back end details. Every successful business needs both sides of that. For every person that's a massive driver, you need a little bit of people behind the scenes that can tie it all together for you and structure it. You have the visionary and the integrator, right? And that's really what it is. And I didn't figure that out for a lot of time. So now when we come in, we really have a clear expectation and idea of, hey, what do I need in this business? What are we heavy on? Are we heavy on drivers? Do we need a little bit of people to tie behind? When we look at a position that needs filled, I don't really look at it necessarily as like I just hired somebody, for example, my personal assistant, but I didn't say, hey, I need a personal assistant. I said, here's all the things that I need that I'm lacking in my business. What would this person look like personality-wise that can fill those gaps for me? And then I basically took the skill set and filled it in there. And that's how we hire people now. So we build the culture out based on what we need. Are we high on a bunch of owls right now? I got a bunch of analytical people sitting around that need some drivers behind them. Okay, let's bring in some drivers. So when you start to build an organization that way, you really build it more of like a masterpiece is what it is, because you can kind of paint what you need in there instead of just taking anybody in the door,
Yeah, 100%. No, that's fantastic. You mentioned Michaela a second ago, so obviously she's your wife, right? Mm-hmm. So how does her being in business with you really affect your home life? Like what's your home and work schedule, and how does that intertwine?
It was a massive struggle, I'll be honest. So when we met, we worked together. We met at Corporate America. We had different roles and we were in different departments, so we never really worked together. We just rode to work together, which was super cool. But then when we actually started working together, we used to butt heads a lot. It was really, really bad for a while. She's like, I'm more of like a driver, not organized, careless type person, big picture visionary. She's very much a details, organized, structure type person. And so you guys know how that goes, opposites attract, whatever. But the problem was where we really struggled at in business, and this is where I think where a lot of couples is that they always try to overstep their boundaries in business. So for example, she would try to step in and overtake the trainings and overtake the things that I was really good at, and it just frustrate the hell out of me. Yeah. I would come in and overtake things that she was really good at, like organizing. I'd be like, oh, that's not important, don't worry about it, da-da-da. And there was just no gray area. We had the same talk. We would sit down a couple years ago and we said, listen, if we're going to do this, especially when we open the brokerage up, she wanted to go in and be behind the scenes, the ops, and she does really good on sales on her own, by the way, but she's not like the, hey, every day get out and kill type guy like I am. But we basically clearly defined, hey, this is what you're super good at. This is your role within the business. Here's what I'm super good at. This is what's important to me. This is what's important to me. I just stay out of her lane now. I say, hey, this is a you thing. If you need my input, ask. And then she does the same for me. And ever since we had that dynamic of like, this is our roles and I respect your role, you respect my role, and together it works very well, things really smoothed out for us at that point. So
yeah, and I think that's super important. Like that took me a while to learn, especially when we were growing our business here at Elder, trying to figure out like, okay, hey, I need this here and I want to bring someone in, and maybe that wasn't their talent. And really having to step back and be like, okay, this is their talent. If I put them here, they're going to be able to excel even more. And on top of that, they love what they do and they know what they're good at. So their drive is, tenfold compared to over here where they may not really like that as much, right? Or feel like they're not good at it. So yeah, that's a great point. I was listening to, I think it was one of your stories on Facebook and or Instagram, whatever the case is. And you were talking about, you get up at like 3 a.m. Is that right? Mm-hmm. So, and you were talking about creating that time for yourself. Yeah. So why is that important in your life to have that time for yourself?
Well, here's the thing. When you start to grow a business, and this isn't even for business owners, this is anybody, 6, 7 o'clock in the morning, the world needs you. And so I tell people, like, at some level, the world needs you. Either your boss is going to need you, your job's going to need you, your spouse is going to need you. In my case, kids, all the things, right? I get my kids up from school. So a lot of people like to make the excuse, I just can't get up early in the morning. And then they complain when they don't get to do self-development. They complain when they don't get to go to the gym. And really what it is when you look at a lot of people that don't have that balance, like what we're talking about, balance between work and life, it's because they're spending a lot of time at work and they're spending a lot of time not doing things for themselves. And a lot of people are like, oh, it's selfish to do things for yourself. What I did was I built it into my schedule where my first 3 hours of the day are my self time. It's not taking away from anybody else. You know, my kids are still asleep. My wife was still asleep as of recently. She's actually been getting up, going to the gym with me early too. But for the longest time, I would get up at 3, go do my morning cardio, you know, do a couple mile jog in the morning, walk, listen to my podcast, my personal development, listen to audiobooks. I'll go do that, then go to the gym and lift weights, right? So all my fitness, all my personal development, all my me time, I got 3 hours dedicated to solely me before the expectation of me giving myself back to the rest of the world. Now I've got myself taken care of. I'm in the right frame of mind because truth be told, every day I wake up, I'm not in a great mood. Like, you know, things happen. You're a business owner. You're carrying the weight of the world on your shoulders every day. You got a lot of responsibility as it is as a husband, dad, all the things. So there's no way that I can't get up in the morning and I'll wake up like a crabby asshole. Like, I'll be honest, some days I'm just frustrated where after listening to a podcast for an hour, getting 2 miles of cardio in, going to the gym, lifting weights, getting cleaned up, getting a shower, and then my kids wake up, then I'm not already in a good mood. I got all my personal issues have been completely sorted out within the first 2-3 hours of my day. And everybody's like, how are you so positive every morning? Well, I took 2 to 3 hours to work on myself every friggin' morning. And a lot of people hear that and they're like, oh, it's just a pain in the butt to get up 2 hours early. Well, you know, try giving yourself personal time, buy your time back. Your life will feel a whole lot balanced because now when you have an entire day and you lay your head down at night, it doesn't feel like I spent my whole day giving it to other people. No, I got 2-3 hours to give to myself. I felt great. I got myself aligned with where I needed to be. I got my attitude. Now I can focus on the rest of my day, giving to everybody else the highest and best version of myself.
Yeah, 100%. I think that's a lot of things that people like, you know, growing up in my business, seeing other business owners, meeting people that, you know, that are starting their own type of business stuff, that was a big portion that was missing. And a lot of the people that, you know, I started my business around, they don't have theirs now. And I think a big part of that is like the self-development, not creating that time for yourself.
You'll burn out. You'll burn out real fast.
Yourself out very quick. So, and so you go to the gym, obviously, like how has that affected your business? Being able to go to the gym and actually exercise.
It all ties into everything, right? Like you can't operate from a high place of confidence, self-value if you don't look and feel good about yourself. Right. Especially me, I'm in a sales position. Really, we're all in sales position. If you work for a company, you got to sell yourself, you got to sell your skills, you got to sell your knowledge. It doesn't matter what you do. Every day, if you wake up and you look in the mirror and you can't be happy or proud with who you are, right? Whether that's mentally, physically, emotionally, financially, if you can't look at you as a solid pillar, how do you expect anything around you to be held up? You're the foundation of everything around you. So you can make a choice and say, I'm going to fix everything. I'm going to fix myself first, because no matter how much you try to fix in your business, fix everything, you're the pillar of that. And if you can't set aside time to fix that, so for example, me going to the gym, staying in shape, well, I like having high energy. I like being, I don't want to be freaking sluggish. I don't want to be out of shape. I don't want to be in the doctor's office all the time with high blood pressure or anything like that. I want to look at myself in the mirror and say, yeah, I've got high confidence. I look good. I'm in shape. I'm working on my thought process every day. I'm working on my mindset. I'm working on my knowledge so that every day I'm basically showing up as the highest and best version of myself. That's going to pour into every aspect of your business and life.
Yeah, 100%. So your kids, I know, what age are your kids?
My oldest is 15. My youngest right underneath that is 13. And then the youngest below that's 9.
So did they participate with you guys in like any exercise and anything like that?
Not necessarily. They still sleep, and they're teenagers, and they're in that super cool lazy phase at the moment. With that being said, they're all super active though. Like both my daughters are in competitive cheer. My son plays football and all that. They're just not on board with the 3 a.m. schedule yet. Yeah, but they'll get there.
Yeah, because I was asked last week, like, hey, for business owners that are so busy running a business, and like for you, your wife, is intertwined in your business and stuff. Some people are like, okay, people need to be at home taking care of the kids. Well, in my opinion, the kids can watch their parents, right? That example they set, and that's what they're really going to feed off of, 100%, So I was just curious about that. Well, that's fantastic. So for, going back to the balance of home and work life, when you were a kid, what was your vision of your work life and home life, like growing up? Like, what was your want and need? Did you have something figured out? Is this always what you wanted to do, or...
No, I didn't. I wish I could tell people that. I don't have that story of like, oh, I knew I was going to be in real estate when I grew up, right? Like, so background was like just crazy. It was just, I don't know, like it's interesting because I look back at it and everybody likes to throw these words around like trauma and all this shit today. And it's just life. Like, I don't get tied up and let that lean on me. Stuff happens and there's always somebody out there that has a worse story than mine, right? And too many people like to get in these, these competitions and contests today of the woe's me and I've had a worse story. This shit happens, right? Some people are worse, some people are better. So, like, none of that matters. It really just, hey, where did you pick up the torch at and where do you start running, right? That's really what matters. Work with what tools you got. So when I grew up, we grew up in Vegas. That's where I was born and raised at. My dad, hardworking dude, owned a little concrete business, nothing major, like literally one truck and like 3 of his buddies. And they used to pour concrete and sidewalks and stuff like that. When I was 7, I have a sister who's 1 year younger. She was 6, and I have a little brother who was 4, and he ended up passing away. Basically, my dad had an old, it was like a 64, 65 Chevy pickup, and we would ride when my dad would back in the yard every day from coming home from doing concrete work. We'd jump on his bumper, and we'd back in the yard. He had a little ball hitch, like a 2-inch ball hitch, and my little brother, we were both standing on the bumper, and his foot slipped, and he did a face plant on the ball hitch, and the ball hitch went basically through his eye socket. And so I saw that and, beat on my dad's door. And so my dad stops, and it's crazy because I was 7 and I can remember that was yesterday. It was one of my craziest childhood things, so did that. My dad went into a crazy depression because my brother had unfortunately passed away from that. We lived in a rental property for 6 months and got evicted from that. And we literally ended up in Arizona with $500 in our pocket. My mom was out here back in 96 doing campaigning for a guy. There was a guy running for state senator. My mom was like an admin support helping out with that. So they had an office over off of Indian School. And so at that time, my dad basically didn't even tell her. Like, he literally had a yard sale. Everything that didn't sell, we just threw in a U-Haul, and we got like $500 from the yard sale. It's just what we had left. Our old 64 Chevy Suburban and this like old, like an 86, 87 Cadillac Eldorado. That's what we had left. So we literally showed up in Arizona. Told my mom, my dad's like, we're here. We're going to figure it out. We don't know. And luckily, the guy, when we got here, that my mom was working for, let us stay in his office building. He had a little... it's like a little building in downtown Phoenix, and he's like, you guys can stay there. So we stayed there for a couple weeks. My dad got a job doing underground utilities, digging tractor, backhoe type work and stuff like that. We ended up in South Phoenix renting a property. We didn't know South Phoenix was South Phoenix at the time, so we stayed there. Had 2 of our cars stolen within an 8-month period. Nothing fancy. One car, we woke up one morning, it was just gone. They took it and lit it on fire. Took it for a joyride. Bought another one as like this old 80, I think it was like an 89 or 90 Buick LeSabre, nothing crazy. Literally 4 months later, they stole that, and they found it out in the desert, smashed up with like 3 other cars. And then the breaking point, we were at El Prado Park. It was right there on like 19th Avenue in Dobbins area. My sister and I were at a swim meet. Some gang got in a shootout. It was like a Saturday morning. A couple gunshots broke out in the parking lot. My parents were like, we just got to get the hell out of here. So my dad happened to be doing a job site all the way out in Maricopa, Arizona. This is like back in 96, 97.
Nothing out there?
Nothing out there. He was doing a job site, and he goes, I found this great deal on this trailer. It was like a single wide, like 600-700 square foot trailer out there that we could get into, and they were willing to do like an owner finance situation for my dad on like 3 acres. That's where we moved. Bought this little single wide trailer out there. I remember them taking me out there because mind you, I grew up in like Vegas at the time, so it's like, my dad was concrete business and did kind of DJing on the side of these little dive bars at night to pay the bills. To like, we go out there, and I kid you not, going down like the highway, there's a guy on a horse. I'm like, what the hell is this out here? This is out in the middle of freaking nowhere. So we went to school. That's where we moved. We grew up. I moved out there. I think I was like 8th grade. And we went to a 2A school. Elementary, middle, high school was all there. My graduating class, I graduated in 2003. I think there was only like 30, 40 of us. Oh, wow. Yeah, tiny school. Our graduation was over in like 30 minutes. Principal lived across the street. And yeah, so that's where I grew up. So, to tie all that together, I had a conversation with my friend actually on the way here. He grew up out there, and he owns an extremely successful AC company. He comes from a very similar background, like grew up out there on his parents worked the farms, and he grew up in a little house out there and stuff.
Is he the guy that just came and fixed your AC?
Yes. Yeah. Yes. So him and I were literally chatting. He just called me. He's like, hey, I was going down the freeway, and there was this Lambo, and I was trying to race him. I thought it was you. And, we started laughing because he's like, it's crazy because we both like, we're 2 very successful people that came out of this little town. And so I was talking to him about it, and we got on the topic, but to really circle back to all of this is that I just got really freaking tired of not having. I grew up, and it was always can't afford this, can't have this. Got my first job at 12 years old washing airplanes because it was the only thing that was out there.
It's an interesting job.
Yeah, it was a glider ride place out there. So it was within 3 miles of my house. So I used to get up at 5 a.m. and ride my bike down there, and I'd wash airplanes in the morning when I was 12, and I'd stay there. I worked for $2 an hour, and I got tips on the weekends, and then I'd push the airplanes back. So I did that, picked melons in the melon field, just did whatever I could. But it's just one of those things, like, I would see people that were successful, and I never really understood. There was always just seemed like there was this massive gap, you know. And I truly believe that's why I like who I am today. I try to pour into so many like kids and stuff like that, is just trying to be that bridge, because it was just a matter of, I didn't know anybody successful growing up. I grew up like with people that were just average blue collar. Like I literally had nobody that was like, oh, I make really good money. This is how you do it, right? They could really show me how to build, how to build that bridge from here to here. Like, how do you get from here? I didn't have that. And so I just had this crazy, relentless drive. I didn't know what it was going to look like. I started off doing construction, underground utilities, dirt work. I got very lucky. I got a random phone call one day from a lady that I used to go to school with that had a job at University of Phoenix. And that was my very first sales job. Didn't know what I was doing. She's like, you want a job? I was like, doing what? And she was like, just making calls to people. I'm like, is it in the air conditioning? I remember I was sitting in Fountain Hills in a friggin' backhoe digging a ditch for Cox, putting in fiber optic line. It was July. 100-something degrees out, and I'm like, is it an AC? She's like, yes. How much? She's like, $13 an hour or something. I'm like, done. I'll try. I don't even know what I'm doing. I'll try. That was the first time I ever even had a pair of dress pants. Like, she's like, you gotta wear dress clothes. I'm like, I got jeans and work boots and stuff. And I thought it was the easiest thing ever. I'm like, this is a cakewalk job. Like, I used to make $11 an hour digging friggin' ditches and laying asphalt, and you're telling me I could work in the AC and make $35,000 a year and go to school for free? Like,
easy decision.
So I just killed it. I'm like, this is so much better, and so, I guess if I had to really summarize it, you just take opportunity as it comes. You know what I mean? It's really hard to map out. When I hear these kids that are like 20, are like, I'm going to go do this. Like, I don't know. Like, there's a lot of things I thought I wanted to do, and I tried it, and it's like, I just don't love that. It's just not what I'm good at. And then now, it's really true. You kind of build the life you want. Like, for me, it's just my life's an entire game of Monopoly. I literally buy houses, sell houses, market houses, buy rental properties, fix them up. It's a shit ton of fun. It's so fun to me. Like, and I love it. Like, I don't get tired of it. Even on the hardest days, I want to go home and not talk to anybody, but but that was never on my radar when I was a kid. I never grew, hey, I want to be a real estate agent when I grow up, and everybody wants to be an astronaut or a cop or some stuff like that. It's just opportunity comes, and a better opportunity comes, and a better opportunity comes, and you find something a little more that you like and a little more of it you like, and you really identify, I don't like this, I'm going to go do something different, until you find something you just love and happen to make good money at, and you can be really good at it. I wouldn't even say it's passion, because to be honest, like, my passion is building cars and working on cars. I don't do that for a living, you know what I mean? Because eventually I get tired of it. But I'm really good at real estate, and it pays me good. I'm between the two, and here's where I am now. So
and now you can use that to go build cars.
You got it, 100%.
I know you're building one right now. I'm really eager to see what comes of that. So going back to the hunger aspect. So you said, hey, what really drove you, the hunger that you had, was really being sick of not having anything, right?
Yep.
So now that you have stuff, now that you've grown a successful company and built yourself into a 7-figure person, is what I would call it. Like, what do you do to keep that hunger there? Keep it going? It's really, so motivation changes, right? Like, when I was a kid, I remember I put a Facebook post up, I was like 22, and I was like, if I could just make $100,000 a year, I'd be set. It was the craziest thing. Like, that literally was like my goal. $100,000. If I can make 100 G's a year, I'd be set. Yeah. It popped up in my memories like 3 years ago, and I laughed. Really? I was like, if I made $100,000 right now, like in my position for like what I do, I literally would consider myself homeless. So, from my capabilities, you know what I mean? And so, with that being said, I really have just learned that there's not an end game. It's an infinite game. A lot of people that get into business, they have this picture painted of, I'm going to do this, I'm going to build my company, I'm just going to sell my company. And it never, almost ever works out that way. And it's a frustrating way when you think about that, because at that point, you always have your eye on a finish line. At that point, you're always like, okay, I'm just aiming for this $10 million valuation of my business so I can sell it and go sip pina coladas on a beach. When in reality, if you just fall in love with the process of growing every year, right? Like, if you were to ask me when I very first got into real estate, I'll never have a team. I didn't want one. Like, my first team, I had to have it out of necessity because I got so busy. My wife literally was like, you're hiring somebody. I said, no, hell no. When I left corporate America, I don't want to work for anybody. I'm working for myself. Grew a team, grew successful, found out, I really love taking people that have a passion for real estate and teaching them how to do a business. I was good at it. Ran a successful team. I'll never own a friggin' brokerage. I don't forget that. Way too much overhead, too much work, too much responsibility. Here I am, right? So if I were to follow that rule of my whole life's planned out, right? Instead of just having an open mind to things, right? What feels good, what feels right, what opportunities cross my plate, and what's next? I could be doing something completely different in the next 20 years. I don't know, but as long as I love doing what I'm doing, and as long as I still see that there's runway to grow, I'm going to keep doing that. Yeah.
And I tell people that in business all the time. I'm like, don't lock yourself into one thing. There is a thing where you have to stay consistent, right? There's an opposite side of that where you get these young guys that are like you see it every other month, they're doing something new. I'm selling friggin', this whatever, MLM program, and I'm doing this and I'm doing this and I'm doing this. And you're like, holy crap, dude. Like, you're not giving yourself enough time for your seeds to plant, that you put down. But at this point in my career, to answer your question, to keep it going, it's an infinite game. Like, I couldn't even see myself retiring. I don't even know what that would look like. It looks like depressing.
Yeah.
Like,
boring.
Like when I picture myself like retired and just traveling around and sitting, like it doesn't even, and now could that change? Maybe. But right now I'm just more focused on like, hey, how can we continue to grow? How can we get better? How can we focus? And then as long as I keep that mission, naturally things behind me are going to grow. I don't get tied to a dollar amount. I don't get tied to here's my exit plan. I don't tie to any of that. It's just, every year, am I moving forward? Every year, is my income growing? Every year, is my business growing? Every year, am I growing? And that's all my field goal is every year to make sure that it's a little further and a little further and a little further. And where the chips lie in that, I'm okay with.
Yeah, 100%. So that's fantastic. So that was pretty much every single question that I had. I mean, we really just want to dig into like what you do and kind of your perspective on everything. How can people get a hold of you if they want to, buy a home, sell a home?
Yep, all over social media, Blake_sells_AZ, Facebook, Blake Clark. I'm all over there, all over the internet. Just Google it.
So. Yeah, we'll have your links at the bottom of the page for all of you guys that want to, like I said, he's a great realtor. We've been able to do some work on his house, and so we've gotten to be able to see a different kind of side of him, especially from business aspect, and really kind of working together as a team to kind of make his house come to life. So it's been fantastic. He's a great guy. Like I said, there's nobody else that would be better to sell your home or help you find a home. So that's Blake, Limitless Realty. Thank you guys for tuning in to Homework Assignment, and stay tuned for the upcoming episodes.
Thanks for having me, guys. Appreciate it.